87% of developers don't realize Claude can now literally take control of their computer, and Anthropic just made it public.
Take control? Like actually move my mouse and type commands? So we're covering how it works, the security implications, and what Anthropic's warning us about?
By minute 4, you'll know exactly what Claude can access and how to protect yourself. Let's get into it.
Welcome to the AI Daily Podcast. Today's news and a deep dive to help you stay ahead in AI.
Today, we're diving into Claude code can now take over your computer to complete tasks.
Stick around to the end for today's headlines. Let's dive right in.
So let's talk about Anthropic's latest bombshell. Claude can now literally take control of your computer and complete tasks for you. This isn't just another chatbot update, Alex. We're talking about an AI that can move your mouse, click buttons, type in applications, basically operate your computer like a human would.
Wait, hold on. When you say take control, are we talking about screen sharing, or is this something fundamentally different?
Completely different. This is Claude actually seeing your screen through computer vision, understanding what's on it, and then sending commands to control your mouse and keyboard. Think of it like having an invisible assistant sitting at your desk, except it's AI.
That's both incredible and terrifying. How does this even work technically? Are they using some kind of remote desktop protocol?
From what Anthropic has revealed, it's using a combination of computer vision to understand the screen content and then translating that understanding into actual system commands. The AI can see buttons, text fields, menus, everything you see, and then figure out how to interact with them to complete tasks.
But here's what I'm wondering. How is this different from existing automation tools? We've had RPA, Selenium, AutoHotkey for years.
Great question. Those tools require explicit programming. You have to tell them exactly what to click, where to type, step by step. Claude is doing something fundamentally different. You give it a high-level goal, like book me a flight to Seattle next Tuesday under $400, and it figures out how to navigate websites, compare prices, fill out forms, all on its own.
So it's the difference between scripting every action versus having an intelligent agent that can adapt to different interfaces and unexpected situations.
Exactly. And think about the implications for technical work. Imagine telling Claude to set up a Kubernetes cluster with these specifications and watching it navigate through cloud consoles, configure settings, handle errors.
Okay, but let's be real here. What about security? We're essentially giving an AI root access to our machines.
That's the million-dollar question, and it's why Anthropic's safety-first approach matters here. They've built in significant constraints. The AI operates through a controlled interface, not direct system access. It can only do what you could do with a mouse and keyboard.
But even with those constraints, couldn't it theoretically access sensitive data on screen, open files, read emails?
Absolutely, which is why Anthropic is being careful with the rollout. They're starting with limited beta access and specific use cases. But you're right, this opens up huge privacy and security questions that the industry hasn't fully grappled with yet.
What really gets me, though, is the productivity angle. How many hours do we waste on repetitive digital tasks, filling out forms, moving data between systems, configuring environments?
Right? And it's not just about saving time. It's about democratizing access to complex digital tasks. Not everyone can write scripts or knows keyboard shortcuts, but everyone can describe what they want done in plain English.
Although, doesn't that assume the AI actually understands context correctly? What happens when it misinterprets instructions?
Coming up, we'll dig into exactly how Anthropic is handling those edge cases, what safeguards they've built in, and why their approach might actually be more robust than you'd think. Plus, we'll look at what this means for the competitive landscape with OpenAI and Google racing to release similar capabilities.
So Anthropic's approach to computer control is actually quite sophisticated. They're not just doing simple OCR and click automation. The system uses what they call multimodal understanding. It's processing visual information from your screen while maintaining conversational context about what you're trying to achieve.
Right, and here's where it gets really interesting technically. Claude is essentially building a semantic understanding of the interface. It's not just seeing pixels, it's understanding that this is a button, that's a drop-down menu, this text field expects an email address.
How accurate is this recognition, though? I mean, modern UIs can be pretty complex. Think about web apps with dynamic content, custom components, shadow DOMs.
From the early demos and beta user reports, it's surprisingly robust. The AI seems to handle standard web interfaces well, your typical SaaS applications, e-commerce sites, productivity tools. Where it struggles more is with highly customized enterprise applications or games with non-standard UIs.
That makes sense. Those would have visual patterns it hasn't been trained on. But what about performance? Is this running locally or in the cloud?
It's cloud-based, which raises interesting latency questions. Every screen capture has to be sent to Anthropic's servers, processed, and then commands sent back. We're talking about multiple round trips for complex tasks.
That's gotta add up. What kind of delays are users seeing?
Early reports suggest anywhere from 1 to 3 seconds between actions, depending on complexity. For comparison, a human might take 0.5 to 1 second to move a mouse and click, so it's slower than human operation, but for tasks you can walk away from, that hardly matters.
True. If it can fill out my expense reports while I'm in a meeting, I don't care if it takes 20 minutes instead of 10.
Now, let's talk about the competitive landscape because this is where things get really interesting. OpenAI has been hinting at similar capabilities with their GPT-4V model. Google's got Project Jarvis in the works. Microsoft is deeply integrated with Windows.
But Anthropic beat them all to market. How did a smaller player pull this off?
I think it comes down to focus. While OpenAI has been spreading efforts across multiple modalities, voice, image generation, video, Anthropic has been laser-focused on making Claude the best text-based assistant. Computer control is a natural extension of that.
Still, releasing this kind of capability seems risky for a company that prides itself on AI safety. What safeguards are they implementing?
Several layers, actually. First, there's the sandboxing. Claude operates through a virtual browser environment, not direct OS access. Second, they've implemented rate limiting to prevent rapid automated actions. Third, there's human-in-the-loop confirmation for sensitive operations.
Define sensitive operations. Are we talking financial transactions, file deletions?
Both, plus things like sending emails, modifying system settings, or accessing password managers. Basically, anything with permanent consequences requires explicit user confirmation.
But couldn't a determined attacker find ways around these safeguards? Social engineering the AI, for instance?
That's the ongoing challenge. Anthropic claims they've done extensive red teaming, testing scenarios where users try to trick Claude into harmful actions. They've built in refusal mechanisms. Claude will decline requests that seem suspicious or harmful.
How sophisticated are these refusal mechanisms? Can it distinguish between legitimate automation and potential abuse?
From what we've seen, it's pretty nuanced. For example, Claude will help you automate filling out your own forms, but will refuse if you ask it to spam contact forms on websites. It can help you organize your files, but won't help you exfiltrate data from a system you shouldn't access.
The real test will be how it handles edge cases. What about legitimate security research, penetration testing?
Great point. This is where the technology bumps up against policy questions. Anthropic says they're working with security researchers to define acceptable use cases, but it's definitely a gray area.
And let's not forget about the business model implications. This kind of capability could be incredibly valuable for enterprise automation.
Absolutely. Imagine the RPA market, currently worth billions, suddenly disrupted by AI that doesn't need extensive configuration. Stick around, we'll break down exactly what this means for your automation strategy and what you should be doing right now to prepare for this shift. So let's get practical. If you're a platform engineer or technical leader, what should you actually do about this? First, understand that this technology is going to reshape how we think about automation. The old model of writing detailed scripts for every task is about to become obsolete.
But should teams start adopting this immediately, or is it better to wait for the technology to mature?
I'd recommend a measured approach. Start by identifying your highest value, most repetitive tasks that don't involve sensitive data. Things like environment setup, test data generation, documentation updates. These are perfect candidates for early experimentation.
That makes sense. Low risk, high repetition. What about integrating this with existing CI/CD pipelines?
That's where it gets interesting. Imagine Claude handling the manual steps in your deployment process, those annoying web console configurations that you can't easily automate through APIs, or handling the edge cases in your runbooks that require human judgment.
But how do we maintain audit trails? Compliance is going to want to know who did what and when.
Critical point. Any implementation needs to include comprehensive logging. Every action Claude takes should be recorded. Screenshots before and after, commands executed, the original request. Think of it like pseudo logs, but for UI automation.
What about cost? This can't be cheap to run at scale.
Current pricing isn't public for the computer control features, but based on Anthropic's API pricing, you're probably looking at cents per task, not dollars. Compare that to human hours at engineering rates, and the ROI could be significant for the right use cases.
Still, there's the reliability question. What's your fallback when the AI fails or hallucinates?
Build in circuit breakers. Set up monitoring for anomalous behavior. Too many failed attempts, unexpected navigation patterns, operations taking too long, and always maintain manual override capabilities.
How should teams prepare their infrastructure for this? Any specific security considerations?
Absolutely. First, implement proper network segmentation. These AI agents should operate in isolated environments with limited access to production systems. Second, use dedicated service accounts with minimal permissions. Third, implement time-based access controls. The AI only gets access when actively performing tasks.
What about the human element? How do we prepare our teams for working alongside AI agents?
Great question. This isn't about replacement, it's about augmentation. Engineers should focus on defining success criteria, handling exceptions, and improving the AI's performance over time. Think of yourself as an AI supervisor rather than a scriptwriter.
That's a significant mindset shift. Instead of how do I automate this, it becomes how do I teach the AI to handle this?
Exactly. And here's what I think most people are missing. This technology is going to create new categories of work. Someone needs to design AI-friendly interfaces, create guardrails, optimize prompts for complex tasks. These are entirely new skill sets.
So, what's your prediction for the next 12 months? How fast will this adoption happen?
I think we'll see 3 phases. First, the next 3 to 6 months will be early adopters experimenting, finding edge cases, establishing best practices. Then 6 to 12 months out, we'll see enterprise platforms starting to build native support. Finally, 12 to 18 months from now, this becomes table stakes for any serious automation platform.
Any specific recommendations for listeners who want to get ahead of this curve?
3 things. 1, get hands-on experience now. Join the beta, experiment with simple tasks. 2, start documenting your manual processes with an eye toward AI automation. What context does the AI need? What decisions require human judgment? 3, implement time-based access controls. The AI only gets access when actively performing tasks.
This really does feel like a paradigm shift in how we interact with computers.
It is. We're moving from explicit instructions to intent-based computing. Instead of learning how software works, we're teaching software what we want. That's profound. The teams and organizations that understand this shift and adapt their processes accordingly are going to have a massive competitive advantage. The question isn't whether AI will be controlling computers in your organization, it's whether you'll be ready when it does. Before we wrap up, let's catch up on this week's infrastructure news. There's a fascinating development from OpenAI. They're planning to double their workforce as they pivot hard toward enterprise AI solutions. According to TechSpot, this massive expansion comes as competitors like Anthropic are really gaining traction with enterprise clients.
That's a significant shift. Are they feeling the pressure from Claude and other enterprise-focused models?
It certainly seems that way. OpenAI has dominated the consumer space, but enterprise adoption requires different priorities: security, compliance, custom deployments. This hiring spree suggests they're serious about not letting that market slip away.
Speaking of enterprise deployments, NVIDIA just published a deep dive on deploying disaggregated LLM inference workloads on Kubernetes. They're tackling a real pain point here.
Right. Instead of these monolithic serving processes, they're showing how to split the inference pipeline across multiple containers. This could be huge for scaling and resource optimization in production environments.
And speaking of NVIDIA, did you catch what Jensen Huang said? He's claiming humanity has already reached AGI.
That's generating quite the debate on Reddit. The AI community seems pretty divided on this one. Some think he's being overly optimistic about current capabilities.
It's a bold claim. We're seeing impressive capabilities, but whether that constitutes true AGI is still hotly contested.
Meanwhile, Red Hat's working on something interesting with the National AI Research Resource. They're helping build the control plane for OpenAI research, addressing a real challenge researchers face:
Which is?
how to collaborate openly while maintaining control over data and intellectual property. It's that classic open source tension applied to AI research infrastructure.
And in funding news, Air Street Capital just closed a massive $232 million Fund 3, making them one of the largest solo VCs in Europe.
They're targeting early-stage AI companies across Europe and North America. This is a huge vote of confidence in the European AI ecosystem.
Now for some important software releases. Crew AI just dropped version 1.11.1, and this is a security release folks should pay attention to.
They're patching vulnerabilities in PyPDF, TinyTag, and Langjane.core, but they've also added some nice features like flow structure serialization and better LLM config preservation for non-OpenAI providers.
The path traversal fix in FileWriter tool is particularly important if you're using their file operations.
And PyTorch 2.11.0 is out. The big headline here is support for differentiable collectives for distributed training.
That's going to make gradient synchronization much more efficient in distributed setups. They've also expanded flex attention capabilities, though the release notes cut off there.
Both of these are marked as security releases too, so if you're running either in production, definitely prioritize these updates.
That wraps up today's news.
That's our show for today.
If you found this valuable, please subscribe and share with a friend who'd appreciate it.
Drop us a comment with your thoughts on today's topic.
Links to everything we discussed are in the show notes.
Until next time.